Have you ever felt like you're not enough, unless someone else tells you so, that somehow your worth depends on how many people like you, follow you, or praise your choices? That's the world we live in. Modern society is loud. It tells us, over and over again, that we need others to feel complete. It says, you need validation to be valuable. You need approval to be accepted. You need company to be whole. But what if that's a lie? What if the very thing we're running from, being alone, is exactly where our greatest strength lives? Cut to a marble statue of Marcus Aurelius, slowly illuminated by morning light. More than 1.800 years ago, a Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius, wrote something stunningly simple. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. This man ruled over millions. He sat on the most powerful throne of his time, and yet he found peace not in people, not in power, but in solitude. He didn't seek his worth in applause or approval. He found it by standing alone. And that raises a question for us today. Right finger, when was the last time you truly stood by yourself? Not because you were forced to, but because you chose to? Think about it. The greatest breakthroughs in history didn't happen in crowded rooms. They happened in quiet corners, in silent moments, in the company of self. We celebrate warriors, leaders, innovators, but forget that they all had to learn how to walk alone before the world walked with them. Because here's the truth they knew, and the truth you must remember. Sparkles, you don't need to be validated to be valuable. Sparkles, you don't need to be surrounded to be strong. Sparkles, you don't need to be followed to lead. Narrator, quietly, but firmly. This is the beginning of the Stoic warrior's path. It's not an easy road, but it's the one that leads inward, toward power, peace, and purpose. And it starts, not with noise but with the courage to be still. Most people hear the word solitude and instantly feel uneasy. They picture loneliness, emptiness, punishment. But what if we've been taught wrong? What if solitude isn't a sentence, but a sanctuary? You see, in today's world, where notifications never stop and silence is treated like a problem, we've forgotten how to just be with ourselves. We fill every free second with noise. Scrolling, checking, calling, watching, not because we're curious, but because we're afraid of the quiet. Right finger, afraid of what we'll hear when the world goes silent. Right finger, afraid of what we'll feel when we finally stop running. But here's what the Stoic warrior understands. Solitude isn't your enemy. It's your greatest ally. Take Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher. He was exiled, alone, far from Rome. No crowds, no comforts, just his thoughts, and in that isolation, he didn't crumble, he created. His writings, born from solitude, still guide humanity 2,000 years later. Because when you're alone, really alone, the world's expectations fade. There's no one to impress, no roles to play, no masks to wear, and what's left is you. Raw, honest, unfiltered. That can be terrifying, but it's also where true power begins. Think about it. When was the last time you sat in complete silence, no phone, no music, no distractions, for even 10 minutes? If that sounds unbearable, you're not alone, but you're also not free. Because here's the truth. If you can't sit quietly with yourself, you haven't really met yourself. And if you haven't met yourself, how can you ever know what you truly value, what you truly want, who you truly are? The Stoic warrior protects time for sacred solitude, just like they would train for battle or sharpen a sword. They understand. This is where clarity is born. This is where your moral compass is calibrated. This is where you stop performing and start aligning. And here's the secret. Solitude isn't empty, it's full of ideas, insights, direction. It's the birthplace of vision, the training ground of courage, the place where your future self begins to take shape. So, start small. 5 minutes each morning. No goals, no agenda, just you and your thoughts. Cloud, go for a walk without music or podcasts. Fork and knife with plate, eat a meal in silence. At first, it might feel uncomfortable, but discomfort is the first sign of growth. Soon, you'll start hearing something powerful. Your own voice. And once you've found that voice, no one else's opinion can drown it out. Narrator, quietly, as the scene fades, while the world fights for attention, you're building something stronger, something unshakable. That's why the Stoic warrior walks alone, not to escape the world, but to understand themselves before they return to it. Let me ask you something. How many dreams have you buried just because someone didn't approve? How many times have you held your tongue, dimmed your light, or changed your mind, just to avoid being judged? If you've ever felt the pressure to be someone you're not, just to be liked, you're not alone, but you also need to hear this. You'll never be free until you stop living for other people's opinions. The Stoics had a simple, powerful truth. No one can hurt you without your consent. Epictetus. Read that again. It's not what someone says to you that hurts, it's whether you believe it. Most people walk through life chained to the opinions of others, parents, friends, strangers on the internet. They let gossip decide their goals, they let judgment shrink their potential. But the Stoic warrior, they develop something rare, something powerful: opinion immunity. What is that? It's not arrogance, it's not refusing to listen, it's the ability to tell the difference between feedback that helps and noise that harms. Think about it. Someone criticizes your dream, maybe they gave up on theirs. Someone questions your values, maybe they've never found their own. Someone mocks your ambition, maybe they're scared to face their own regrets. Most judgment doesn't come from clarity, it comes from pain. What people say about you usually says more about them. So why do we care so much? Because deep down, we're wired to belong, we want connection, but somewhere along the way, we confused approval with acceptance and forgot how to validate ourselves. Here's the practice. Right finger the next time you feel pulled to make a decision based on someone else's opinion. Pause. Ask yourself, is this person living the life I want? Are they happy, fulfilled, and aligned with their truth? Or are they stuck, scared, projecting? And most importantly, would I trade lives with them? If the answer is no, why would you trade your choices for theirs? You don't owe anyone your conformity. You owe yourself your courage. You'll never make everyone happy. You could win awards, build empires, change lives, and someone will still have something to say. So stop giving them that power. Instead, give that power back to yourself. Trust your inner compass. Listen to your truth. That's what the Stoic warrior does. They don't ignore everyone. They just prioritize wisely. They seek feedback from people who love them, not control them. They listen to voices rooted in wisdom, not wounded ego. Because in the end, the only opinion that truly matters is the one you hold when you look in the mirror. You weren't born to blend in, you weren't built to live someone else's story, so stop asking for permission to be yourself. You don't need it. Let's get one thing straight. Being self-reliant doesn't mean you're selfish, it doesn't mean you don't care, it means you're strong enough to carry your own weight, so you can help carry others when it counts. We live in a world that often confuses independence with coldness, or self-sufficiency with isolation, but the Stoic warrior sees through that lie. They know. Right finger, true service to others begins with strength within. Right finger, you can't give what you don't have. Right finger, and you can't lift someone else if your own feet aren't steady. You've heard this before. In case of emergency, secure your own oxygen mask before assisting others. Sounds simple, but it's profound. Because life is the emergency. And unless you learn how to breathe first, how to manage your mind, regulate your emotions, meet your own needs, you'll always be gasping for air in the chaos of others. Self-reliance isn't a wall, it's a foundation. A place where confidence grows, where resilience is built, where your true identity takes root, not in what others provide, but in what you cultivate within. It's in the everyday moments. Pushpin learning to cook your own meals instead of waiting to be served. Pushpin making your own decisions instead of pulling the crowd. Pushpin sitting with your own emotions without asking someone else to fix them for you. That's emotional sovereignty. It's not about being emotionless. It's about owning your emotional world. Can you be upset and still speak with grace? Can you feel fear and still act with integrity? Can you be vulnerable without falling apart? That's what self-reliance looks like. It's not the absence of struggle, it's the presence of strength during struggle. And yes, it includes spiritual self-reliance too. Don't outsource your truth, don't just repeat what others told you to believe, go seek it yourself. Read. Reflect. Wrestle with the big questions. What do you stand for? What gives your life meaning? What would you still believe if no one agreed with you? That's what the Stoic warrior asks. Because when the storms come, and they always do, it's not your titles, your bank account, or your friend list that holds you up. It's your roots, your self-trust, your clarity. So take full responsibility for your experience. No more blaming the past, no more waiting for rescue, no more postponing your power. Start small. Start today. Maybe it's managing your money more consciously, maybe it's learning a new skill, maybe it's just sitting in silence instead of numbing out. Whatever it is, do it not because you have to, but because you can. That's freedom, that's growth, that's what creates the kind of person who doesn't just survive the world, but helps others rise in it. You don't become self-reliant to walk away from others, you become self-reliant, so you can walk toward them without losing yourself. That's the power of standing on your own 2 feet, and that's what makes the Stoic warrior unstoppable. What if I told you that the most valuable teacher you'll ever meet isn't a person, it's your failure? It's not flashy, it doesn't give out degrees, but it gives you something more powerful, wisdom earned in pain. In a world obsessed with perfection, we've grown afraid of the very thing that helps us grow. We treat failure like shame, we hide it, deny it, blame others for it, but the Stoic warrior? They do the opposite. They sit with failure, they don't flinch, they don't run. Because they know, failure isn't the end. It's the invitation to begin again, wiser. The Stoic warrior practices what we call a failure audit. Every time they stumble, they ask 3 simple questions. What was within my control that I could have done differently? What was outside my control that I need to accept? What lesson is life trying to teach me here? That's not weakness. That's mastery. Let me ask you, when was the last time you really examined your mistakes, not to beat yourself up, but to learn not to escape them, but to extract the gold inside them? Because the truth is, most people are terrified to look closely. It's easier to distract ourselves, to move on too fast, or to pretend like it didn't hurt. But healing only happens when you stop avoiding and start understanding. Edison didn't fail 1,000 times, he found 1,000 ways that didn't work, and in doing so, he built something that lit the world. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Powerful, isn't it? The obstacle is the lesson, the pain is the classroom, and you're the student, if you choose to be. Look, nobody enjoys failing. That's not the point, but if you're trying big things, living bold, loving fully, chasing meaning, then failure isn't optional, it's guaranteed. The only question is, what will you do with it? Will you bury it or will you study it? Because here's the truth, the Stoic warrior knows. What breaks most people can build you, if you let it. This is what we call becoming anti-fragile, not just surviving pressure, but growing because of it. Pushpin, maybe you underestimated your time. Pushpin, maybe you avoided a hard conversation until it became a crisis. Pushpin, maybe you chose emotion over logic. Good. Now you know, now you can do better. That's what a failure audit reveals. Patterns, not just what went wrong, but why it keeps going wrong. The Stoic warrior doesn't just bounce back, they bounce back stronger, they turn failure into fuel, they build resilience. Brick by brick, through every breakdown. So the next time something doesn't go as planned, don't rush to escape it, don't numb it, don't spin it for social media. Sit with it, study it, grow from it. Failure is not your enemy, it's your professor, and if you're willing to listen, it will teach you how to become unstoppable. Life will test you, people will judge you, plans will fall apart, and emotions? They'll rise like waves, crashing into everything you thought was secure. But the Stoic warrior doesn't collapse. Why? Because they've built something no storm can touch, something stronger than opinions, setbacks, or chaos. They've built an inner fortress, not made of stone, but of perspective, principles, and identity, a fortress that shields the soul without shutting out the world, a sanctuary that no one, not critics, not failure, not even fear, can enter without permission. Let's break that down. Perspective is the first line of defense, it's the ability to zoom out, to step back, to say, this feels overwhelming right now, but in the grand scheme of life, will it matter a year from now? 5 years? On my deathbed? Most people live zoomed in, everything feels urgent, permanent, personal, but perspective reminds you, nothing lasts forever, not this emotion, not this opinion, not this crisis. And once you realize that, you stop reacting, you start responding. 2. Principles, the inner structure. Your principles are the architecture of your fortress. They're not rules handed down by someone else, they're your chosen values, the beliefs you live by when no one's watching. Do you know yours? Because when everything around you feels unstable, it's your principles that guide your next step. Right finger when you're tempted to react in anger. Your principle of patience holds you back. Right finger when you could cut corners. Your principle of honesty keeps you steady. Right finger when fear tells you to run. Your principle of courage says, stand firm. Without principles, you're exposed. With them, you're grounded. 3. Unshakable identity, the inner keep. This is the heart of the fortress. It's the realization that you are not your job, your relationships, your emotions, or even your thoughts. You are the observer, the constant, the witness. Most people confuse themselves with their circumstances. They say, I am a failure. Instead of, I failed today. They say, I am anxious. Instead of, I'm feeling anxiety right now. But the Stoic warrior knows, I am not my pain. I am the space in which that pain is happening, and that space is free. When you grasp that, really grasp it, no one can define you, no loss can undo you, no criticism can break you. Because your worth doesn't live out there, it lives in here. So how do you build this fortress? You practice. Every time you choose clarity over chaos, every time you act from principle, not pressure, every time you remember who you are, not who they say you are, you lay another brick. And soon, you realize something incredible. You don't need everyone to agree with you. You don't need life to be easy. You don't even need perfect emotions. You just need your fortress. Because when the storm comes, and it will, you'll be ready, not because the storm is small, but because you are no longer shaken by the wind. You've built something stronger. You've built yourself. Let's face it, you can't please everyone. No matter how kind you are, how hard you try, how carefully you speak, act, or live, eventually, you'll disappoint someone. And here's the truth. That's okay. Because if your goal is to keep everyone happy, you'll end up betraying the one person who matters most, yourself. We're taught from an early age to be agreeable, to say yes when we mean no, to nod when we disagree, to shrink ourselves to avoid making waves. But the Stoic warrior lives by a different law. They understand that some disappointment is not only inevitable, it's necessary. It's what I call strategic disappointment, the conscious, courageous choice to let others down in order to stay true to who you are. Let me ask you this. Right finger, have you ever agreed to something just to avoid an awkward silence? Right finger, taken a job, stayed in a relationship, or followed a path that wasn't yours, just to keep others happy? Right finger said, yes, out loud while screaming, no, inside? If so, you're not weak, you're human. But it's time to evolve. Because constantly pleasing others may keep you safe, but it won't keep you whole. Every time you say yes to someone else's expectations, you risk saying no to your purpose. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do, for both of you, is to be honest. Yes, they might be disappointed. Yes, they might not understand, but that's not your burden to carry forever. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotions at the cost of your integrity. People respect boundaries more than they respect people pleasing. Sure, they may resist at first, but in the long run, they'll see your clarity, your strength, and your courage. And those who don't, weren't meant to hold the pen in your story anyway. Let's talk real-life examples. Compass, the young woman who tells her family she's not going to med school, even though they've planned it for years. Compass, the father who steps away from a high-paying job because he knows it's killing his spirit. Compass, the artist who keeps creating, even though their friends think it's a waste of time. In each case, someone's going to be disappointed, but the alternative is self-abandonment. And that is the most painful kind of disappointment there is. Because when you disappoint yourself long enough, you forget who you really are. Scene. Back to the lone figure, now walking freely. Lighter, more centered. So what do Stoic warriors do? They disappoint others intentionally, wisely, lovingly, but without guilt. They understand that not every battle is worth fighting, but some absolutely are. Your time, your truth, your soul's path. Those are worth protecting. Here's the paradox. When you have the courage to disappoint the wrong people, you make space for the right ones to show up. People who see you, respect you, love you for who you are, not who you pretend to be. So start practicing now. Compass, say no, without over-explaining. Compass, set a boundary, even if your voice shakes. Compass, make a choice your future self will thank you for, even if someone doesn't get it today. Disappointing others won't ruin your life. But constantly disappointing yourself? That just might. Be brave enough to let people down, so you can finally lift yourself up. Every day, you face battles. Some are visible, deadlines, traffic, pressure from others, but the real war, it's the one that happens inside. And here's the truth few people want to admit. The hardest person you'll ever have to lead is yourself. The Stoic warrior understands this deeply. They know that real power doesn't come from dominating others. It comes from mastering your own mind, emotions, and actions. That's the ultimate victory. Self-mastery. Not just controlling yourself, but choosing yourself. Let's be honest. Anyone can react, anyone can lash out, panic, procrastinate, complain. But the one who pauses, who takes a breath before the outburst, who chooses the higher response when every nerve screams for the lower one. That person is rare. That person is powerful. Every day gives you chances to choose differently. Right finger when someone cuts you off in traffic. Can you respond with patience instead of rage? Right finger when you're criticized. Can you absorb it without spiraling? Right finger when fear whispers, stay comfortable. Can you still lean into growth? These are the moments that forge character. These are the reps that build your inner muscle, and they happen quietly, far from applause, far from spotlight. Most people chase external victories, more money, more followers, more recognition. But what good is all that if your own mind is your biggest enemy? If your emotions hijack every decision, if your impulses run the show? The Stoic warrior flips the script. They say, I don't need to conquer the world until I've learned to conquer myself. Because self-mastery is the root of everything. Seedling discipline, seedling confidence, seedling emotional intelligence, seedling peace. It's not about being emotionless, it's about being emotionally intelligent. Not about never feeling tempted, but about not being ruled by temptation. Self-mastery doesn't mean you're perfect, it means you're in process, but in charge. You observe your thoughts instead of being owned by them. You notice your fear, and still move forward. You feel the urge to quit, and still choose discipline. You become unstoppable not when nothing bothers you, but when nothing controls you. That's freedom, and that's what Stoicism trains you to build. So where do you begin? Compass. Notice one pattern today. Just one. Where you tend to react. Maybe it's impatience. Maybe it's self-doubt. Maybe it's distraction. And then, interrupt it. Pause, breathe. Choose better. Each time you do, you chip away at the old programming. Each time you do, you sharpen the blade, until one day, you look back and realize, you're no longer controlled by emotions, you're guided by wisdom. You're no longer lost in thought, you're anchored in presence. You don't win every fight, but you don't need to. Because now, you're playing a different game. You've stopped chasing the world and you've started leading yourself. The Stoic warrior doesn't boast about victories. They live them, silently, daily, internally. Because the greatest victory is not out there. It's in here. Let's come back to where we started. A single sentence that echoes through time. I walk alone. I rise alone. I win alone. Now, some people hear those words and think, that sounds lonely, cold, isolating. But they've misunderstood the message. This isn't about cutting yourself off from others. It's not about pride or ego or walking with a chip on your shoulder. This is about freedom, about standing so firm in who you are, that you no longer need approval to act, to speak, to live. It's about strength, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that stands silent in the face of chaos. It's about wholeness, not needing to be completed by anyone or anything, because you've already done the work within. You walk alone, not because you don't love others, but because you've built the clarity to know who you are when the noise is gone. You rise alone, not because you reject help, but because you've stopped waiting for permission to grow. You win alone, not because you crave the spotlight, but because your victory is rooted deep in your soul, where no one else can see, and no one else can touch. This is the path of the Stoic warrior. And let me tell you, it's not for everyone. It takes courage to stop blaming, it takes humility to look inward, it takes discipline to stand still when the world demands reaction. But here's the beautiful paradox. Compass. When you no longer seek validation, you become more valuable. Compass. When you no longer fear solitude, you become truly connected. Compass. When you no longer need applause, your impact becomes real. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. He ruled the Roman Empire, but still journaled in the dark, whispering truths to himself that the world wouldn't hear until centuries later. He understood, just like you're beginning to understand now, that fulfillment doesn't come from more. It comes from less noise, less drama, less dependence, and more of you. The world doesn't need more performers, it needs more people who've done the inner work, people who can love without attachment, lead without ego, serve without seeking credit. People like you. Not perfect, not finished, but becoming. So here's the challenge I leave you with. Compass, build your solitude. Compass, guard your values. Compass, disappoint others when necessary, but never yourself. Compass, fail forward. Learn fast. Compass, and above all, master your own mind. Because that is where true power lives. You walk alone, not because you're disconnected, but because you're whole. You rise alone, not because you're better than others, but because you're strong enough to lift them. 2. You win alone, not because the world applauds, but because your victory is written on the inside, and nothing can take that away. I walk the path of the Stoic warrior. Alone, strong, free,